Normally, we would love to invite you in person and have you here live for AHA, our annual Hallwalls Auction. Naturally, in 2020, that's not something we can do. Our auction will be online at ClickBid from December 3rd through December 7th. And if you're in Buffalo, Saturday, December 5th, we will have the works on display here in Bayville for you to check out in person in a socially distanced manner. However, if you don't have a chance to do that, or you're from out of town, maybe you still want to see another perspective on the work, see them in scale to a person. So we prepared this little video to give you an idea of what the works look like in person. So let's check it out. So this piece by Bruce Adams, renowned Buffalo painter, is called Untitled 54, Fire Hydrant. Bruce's work is really figuratively based, although that's really just a springboard for him to paint very conceptual pieces. This is kind of a prototypical Bruce Adams piece in terms of figures being central to it, but other elements feeding the narrative of the painting. And this piece actually was painted specifically for our AHA auction, so it's a brand new piece. This is a piece by Bayous. He's a very well-known Buffalo artist who teaches at Buffalo State College. And as you can see, this piece is acrylic on paper, but cut paper and stapled paper. Yosef is a paper-based artist, although he treats paper very much in a textile fashion. He folds, he cuts, he recombines the paper, and I'm always amazed at the variations that he comes up with. And this is a rather unique treatment of his. I was actually just showing this piece to a visitor to our office. This is a piece by Brooklyn artist Katie Bell. And Katie was one of the last artists we exhibited in our gallery before COVID hit and we went into quarantine. And this piece is called Ava, and it is specifically an homage and a reference to a very famous work of art by Ava Hesse. It's a really delicate little piece. It's acrylic, it's string, and it's very, very sweet, and it would look sweet in your house. So this is a painting called Filter Test from 1998 by Wayne Edson Bryant, and it's one of those pieces in the auction, and there will be a few that seem very 2020. This is enamel and varnish on a birch plywood, and it has a little bomb down there in the middle of a psychedelic or kaleidoscopic landscape, which, you know, feels very 2020 to me. Maybe it feels very 2020 to you, although it's kind of a little more celebratory than disastrous. But it is a dynamic piece, and it's one of the few pieces we have that isn't 21st century. It's 1998. This is a painting called Gloomgawker by Buffalo artist Kyle Butler. And while I wouldn't call Kyle a landscape artist, I would say that a lot of the forms that he uses do borrow from the urban landscape in particular as points of departure in his abstractions. So you can see that, I think, with the angularity and the verticality of this piece, which is really dynamic. It's probably the largest piece we have at our auction this year, but it would look really, really striking in anyone's home. So this beautiful colored piece is by photographer Ellen Carey. It's called Dings and Shadows. Ellen has a great relationship with Hallwalls. She's very special to us. She actually had her MFA show years ago at Hallwalls and has always been very kind in donating to our auction. And just so you know, the paper is not wrinkled, the image is wrinkled. This is a piece by Native American artist Jay Carrier from Niagara Falls, New York. It's called These Things That Scare Us. And it's mixed media on paper, and I'm very excited to have this piece in the auction, as I always am with Jay, but particularly now because we'll be showing a career survey of Jay's work in September and October of 2021. That's going to be very exciting, diving back into his studio and pulling out some of his fantastic pieces. I never fail to find something interesting when I'm there, and this is the latest example. This is a piece by Toronto artist Carlos Cesta, who we showed in 2005 as part of a regional biennial project called Beyond in Western New York. And I don't know if you can really see it on camera, but there's two pieces of aluminum that are beneath this white surface, and the artist has engraved his drawing through the surface into the aluminum, so it's technically engraved aluminum. And you might be wondering why it's not framed. Well, it has a cleat on the back, which means that you can hang it as it is on the wall and it'll just float there like a beautiful silvery cloud. This abstract is called Cluffalo 050 by Hallwalls founder Charles Clough. And Charlie's been making these pieces for many years. This was a really striking one when I went to his studio. He has many paintings stored there, but this one really leapt out at me in the particular way it used color and the way it used form. And one of the interesting things about Charlie, among many things, is that he is an artist that has a work of art in a collection, in a museum collection, in every state in the United States. Winnipeg-based artist Kevin Aichi DeForest has had a long-running series of work called The Record Shop, and that's what he donated this year to our auction. And it's kind of a unique piece in that, as you can see, this one has a little bit of monster madness to it and refers to plunderphonics and the inventor of that, John Oswald. But if you don't feel like looking at that on a given day, you could just flip it around and have a little bit of an abstract cutout landscape to consider. Apart from being the wife and longtime collaborator of filmmaker Hollis Frampton, Marion Fowler was a very well-known photographer in her own right, capturing lots of quotidian and everyday images. And we have three special little pieces by Marion in this year's auction. This is called Lower East Side, New York. I believe it's from 1978. This untitled piece by Marion Fowler is inside a greenhouse, I believe. This final offering by Marion Fowler is called Earth Day 1970, which regrettably has suddenly become topical again. Or maybe it's great that it's become topical again. So there's always a little showstopper piece that you like showing visitors when they visit the office. And this year's auction, this is my showstopper piece that I like to share. This is called I Be Gone, You Be Gone by the Canadian artist duo Fastworms. That's Kim Causey and Di Skews. And they showed in Buffalo with an outdoor sculpture in the 2010 Beyond in Western New York biennial. And this is a raku-fired skull. That's why it's got that beautiful crackle to it. Again, a very 2020 piece, but arguably one of the most elegant pieces we have in our auction at the same time. This is one of the many drawings we have in this year's auction. This is by Erin Finlay, a Toronto artist that showed at Hallwalls a few years ago and quickly became a staff favorite. We've all slowly collected pieces by hers, whether from member shows or drawing rallies or past auctions. And this is a whimsical piece. It's pen and ink with marker on paper. And as you can see, there's sort of a fictitious female, very muscular, pounding the dumbbell and emphatically letting us know that education is a human right. So I'd like to share with you three of the smallest pieces we have in this year's auction, and they're all by New York-based artist Chambliss Giobi, who showed at Hallwalls in 2008. He showed much larger pieces in that exhibition. These are from his Tiny Arcadia series, and they are collage on masonite, and you can see that one's a little bit of a wintry scene. This one is a little more spring-centric. And this one has a little bit more dimension with some actual branches attached to it. They're all obviously odes to the natural world, and they're very sweet and desirable. So this is a drawing by Shea Hembree called Whack. It's a stick winding its way through the air. It's actually a 10-minute drawing, graphite on paper. He did it very fast. Shea showed with us late in 2019. It was a wonderful exhibition. And here's a pro tip. If you want an entertaining 15 minutes, go to YouTube and look up Shea Hembree, How I Became 100 Artists. It's probably one of the best TED Talks you'll ever watch. And we have a drawing by him in our auction this year. This untitled photograph is an Ectaflex dye diffusion print by Bert Henrik. It's from 1982, and it's a really unique piece. It's from a series. He didn't make too many of them, and one of the other photographs from the series is in the collection of the Albright Knox Art Gallery. So we're very fortunate to have this piece included in our auction this year, and it could be in your home very soon. This is a drawing by Toronto artist Marla Hallady, and it's called Proposition for Tracing a Conversation. And you can kind of see the heart of the matter is a little clustered ball of arrows in the middle, which kind of says a lot about trying to trace a conversation, how hard it is, and how elegant it can be to try and do so. This is a mixed media piece, acrylic and collage on paper by Richard Huntington, who was a longtime art critic for the Buffalo News, but was also for many decades and still is a wonderful painter in his own right. This is called Dog/God. And when I was looking through Richard's studio for a piece, I found this one particularly irresistible because of the kind of coy way the dog is sitting there, which seems to be a little bit of a all-knowing Buddha contemplating these abstract forms. And I just thought it was a funny and delightful piece. So I'm a very complicated person with very simple tastes. So says David Kramer in this droll, understated watercolor on paper. Now, David often combines text and imagery in his work, and the text is often very understated and wry, so much so that it appealed to the French fashion designer Celine. And David did a collaboration in the last year with them where some of the phrases from his paintings were actually emblazoned on shirts and handbags and other items of haute couture. And you could have this item of art couture. And another pair of works from the 1980s, late 20th century works that we have in our auction, are these two photographic pieces by David Kulick. Now, they are sold separately. You can bid on them separately, but I'm showing them like this because I kind of really picture them being in a corner somewhere, facing off against each other, and I think they would look really dynamic installed in a space that way. So why don't you consider that when you're bidding? When I contact artists to donate to Hallwalls Auction, it's always artists who have had an exhibition history with Hallwalls, as is the case here with Thomas Lawson, a Glasgow-born artist who showed here many years ago and is part of the Pictures generation. And it's notable because when I emailed Thomas, he said to me in reply that the show at Hallwalls was very significant to him in his career, and he was very enthused about donating a piece for our auction, and it's a beautiful little painting that he contributed. One of the really crisp photographic images that we have in our auction this year is this piece here from the series Hands Holding Things by Canadian artist Micah Lexier. Micah showed at Hallwalls in 1999. He's had a long career as an artist, a curator, a designer, a public artist. And this is just a really interesting little series. He's a conceptual artist, so he tends to make things that are very dry and humorous, but like really to the point. So this is a great piece if you know someone who likes to have everything just so. This quixotic drawing by Buffalo artist Joan Linder is really beautifully rendered, as you can see. And it is a peculiar piece because with its depiction of a cold brew and a package of handy wipes, you could argue that that kind of sums up the year. Back in 1976, Robert Longo and Charlie Clough were trying to think of ways to raise money for their new organization, Hallwalls. And one thing they decided to try and do was create some kind of edition, something that they thought patrons of the arts would like, something that represented power and had an elegance about it and had an emphatic quality about it. So what they did was they sculpted a Thunderbolt. Now this isn't the original, this is from a cast made from the original that Charlie brought into the office a few years ago, and it's called Prototype for a Fundraiser for Hallwalls. And we cast the original, and we did an edition of 25, and this is number 10 of 25. It's cast aluminum. It's not cork inside or anything. It's pure aluminum through and through. It's engraved on this side with both the artist's signatures, and it's numbered. This is a really fantastic piece. We're really excited to be offering it up. It looks great horizontally. It looks great diagonally. It looks great vertically. It's kind of an all-purpose kind of piece, and it could be yours. Back in the late 70s, John Massier was a designer that did a lot of posters for Hallwalls exhibitions and events, and we have a few of those still, in our archives. But he's primarily a photographer now, and this is a piece called Bird Number 1 that he offered up for our auction this year, and it's a really gorgeous mid-flight portrait of the avian variety. No one's ever accused Michael Marion of not having a sense of humor. That was evident in his solo exhibition at Hallwalls a few years ago, and it's evident in this piece that he provided for this year's auction, Sin Above Lust. So I guess it kind of depends on what you're into, sin or lust, but it's a multiple choice piece. Back in 2003, Toronto artist Jennifer McMacken did a residency at Hallwalls, and this was one of the resulting works from that residency. It's actually not the same image doubled. It's a now and next second photographic collage. So the images are almost the same, but they're just successive moments. This is kind of archival in terms of Buffalo history. It's a now long gone motel from Main Street in Buffalo that some of you might recall if you're local. And it makes for a beautiful photo collage. We have a lot of really great drawings in this year's auction. This is a drawing by Arnold Meshies from 1985. And in fact, it was donated back then for a different auction event and didn't sell. So we've had it all this time, and hopefully it'll find an audience now because it's a sweet little drawing. It's called After Gross, that is after George Gross, the artist. And it's just a wonderful piece by a major American artist. This is a photographic image by Kevin Noble from 1980, and it depicts a see-through ruler for space and electronics equipment. It's on Codolift paper with gold spray paint, and it's really a gorgeous piece. It's kind of been in Hallwalls' office for a little while. And I contacted the artist and said, could we put it in the auction because it's such a beautiful, enigmatic piece, and he happily agreed to that. So we're really happy to offer it up to you. Buffalo-born photographer Milton Rogovan is really one of the most important portrait photographers of the 20th century, world-renowned. And this small piece that we have in our auction kind of exemplifies why. It's concise, it's direct, it really shows off the character of its subject. This is called Jefferson Avenue from the Lower East Side, and we're really delighted that we can offer it in our AHA 2020 auction. Color palette number 102 by Ora Rosenberg is something that's going to appeal to painters or photographers. It's a photograph of a palette. It kind of looks like a real palette. It's very richly descriptive of the palette, and it really evokes both media at the same time, and it's sort of a delightful little piece. This little monochromatic painting is called Tomorrow's Dust Flares into Breath by Rochester artist Sarah Sutton. Sarah, along with Katie Bell, was one of the last artists we showed before the quarantine came down in March. And we showed a series of her new works, and then she donated this to our auction. It's multi-layered. It has a lot to do with the onslaught of entropy in the world, and it's at the same time quite beautiful and rapturous. Among everything else in 2020, it was a year where those of us in the Buffalo arts community lost someone close to us, artist Kurt von Vetch, who succumbed after battling brain cancer for 12 years. He was always very generous with Hallwalls, and he was always happy to contribute a piece to our auction. And this is one of the last pieces he ever made. When he brought it in the spring to donate, and I asked him what the title was, he said, "We're gonna make it." Artist William Wegman became famous, and is still famous for his work featuring dogs in photographs and videos. So what we have in our auction this year is a photograph of a dog. It's called So Inclined, and I don't know if you can really tell in the video, but the pedestal that he's standing on is not as crisp as the background. It's a little well-worn and unpainted, which is kind of a nice little touch to a photograph that's otherwise very clean and crisp. And it's a delightful piece, and people like dogs.